Sister's Tourette's may cause havoc at my wedding, so I decided not to invite her to the ceremony. I, 28F, am getting married to my fiancé Max, 25 male, this summer. My sister, who I'll call Megan, 32F, has pretty serious Tourette's. Certain physical movements and saying ha 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 are her most common tics, but there are others as well. As long as I've been alive, I've never seen Megan sit through a long ceremony or presentation without tics, not even her high school/college graduation or, for any siblings' graduations. Her ha 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 is also extremely loud, bordering on yelling, and most of the time repetitive. I have involved and invited Megan to every aspect of the wedding, the rehearsal dinner, the bachelorette party, and the reception, except for the actual ceremony. My fiancé and I are writing our own vows and I just want to hear him say them without interruption. The ceremony is fairly long and I seriously doubt Megan's ability to go that long without titching. She has said that holding back tics is like holding back a sneeze, only 1,000 times more difficult. The only options I see for her going into the ceremony are A, letting the tics go on as normal and be scrutinized by Max's side of the family who hasn't met her yet, or B, trying to suppress them the whole time. Either way it would be a miserable experience for her. I have explained Megan's situation to guests who are unaware, but in Max's family there are several young children and elderly people that I doubt will have tact. Megan was heartbroken when I told her I didn't want her at the ceremony. I explained my reasoning to her about how the ceremony wouldn't be fun for her either way, but she didn't want to hear it. She admitted that she will likely tic when we're reading our vows, but insisted we can just pause and carry on or speak over it. I know this is selfish, but I don't want Max to pause or speak over someone. I want him to read his vows just as he wrote them. Megan has accused me of being mean, ableist, and a bridezilla. My dad is on my side, my mom is on Megan's side, and my other sister, 24F, agrees with me but thinks I should let her come anyway. Max supports whatever I decide but says he hopes this doesn't fracture our sister relationship. So, Ida? Edit, the kids I'm mentioning went to Max's cousin's wedding last year and were very well behaved, even though their ceremony was longer than what we're planning ours to be, so that's why I'm fine with them. I don't know if this helps, but I'm also autistic and have severe struggles when my routines are interrupted or when things don't happen how I plan them. I have often been accused of being a control freak, too type A, etc. Maybe this is just me letting my controlling personality get in the way? Edit 2, deleted the previous edit 2, which was expressing my concern that my post would be removed for talking about violence. This is my first time using Reddit and I have tried to post to different subs where I was told even an allusion to violence would get my post taken down, and I didn't understand the difference here. Now that I do, I'd like to clarify my biggest issue isn't the verbal interruptions, which would greatly upset me anyway, but potential harm for Megan and other guests. There is a non-zero chance she could injure herself or others. This is the actual crux of the issue. I could potentially handle verbal interruptions, although they would make me incredibly unhappy and uncomfortable, but I don't think I can deal having to stop the wedding because someone has been hurt. It usually only happens in high-stress situations when she was younger, but crowds/large groups of people have historically been a trigger for her, and the ceremony would require her to stand in front of a huge crowd pretty closely to other bridesmaids. It's happened only a few times in the past year, which should make me feel confident, but I feel like the anxiety has just been growing and growing, and I don't know how to stop it other than making sure there is a 0% chance it could happen. Even though she said she could deal, she has a history of either underestimating or minimizing how bad her tics would be. She said she could handle her stressors and manage them but whacked me in the face at a funeral a couple years ago. She says she can handle the wedding, and I'm truly sorry if this is ableist, but I simply don't believe or trust her anymore. She is either not being truthful with me or herself about how bad the tics can get. Sorry for so many edits, but I did not mean to communicate that I was ashamed of Megan or cared if Max's family did not approve of her. If that was true, I wouldn't have her at any parts of the wedding since those family members will also be there. Based on her previous reactions to similar situations, I assumed that kids staring would upset her, not me. Stress is a trigger for her. But people in the thread were right about how it wasn't my place to assume and dictate how she would feel, and I messed up on that part. It's hard to balance, reread the previous edit, when Megan does have a history of downplaying/underestimating how bad things could get. Update 1. I've spent a lot of time reflecting on everything that's happened. When I first made my decision, I believed I had accounted for everything, but it turns out, I was seeing the world in black and white, missing all the shades of gray in between. The idea of a compromise hadn't even crossed my mind. It's something I struggle with, rigid thinking, an inability to see the in-between solutions that now seem so obvious. But people have suggested some, and I intend to bring them up to Megan. If the roles were reversed, if I were the one being excluded due to my autism, I'd like to believe I'd understand. If there were a real risk of me having a meltdown in a particular environment, and someone made the difficult choice to leave me out for my own well-being, I wouldn't hold it against them. It's not about fairness. It's about what's best in the moment. Max and I have had long discussions about the future, about the possibility of our child inheriting Tourette's. We've talked about how we'd raise them, what we'd expect, and how we'd advocate for them. We would always demand reasonable accommodations, at school, in the workplace, but we wouldn't expect the world to change entirely for them. If our child were in a wheelchair, we wouldn't insist they run races against able-bodied kids. We'd find places where they could thrive, places that understood their needs, places that would celebrate their abilities rather than highlight their differences. They'd always have alternatives. They'd never feel less than. But there are things I'm unwilling to compromise on, and I admit this freely. I want to say my vows in front of everyone. It's a selfish desire, and I won't pretend otherwise. There's no logic behind it, no deep reasoning. It simply makes me happy. And when I picture doing it privately, that happiness disappears. That's all there is to it. Growing up, my struggles were always overshadowed. I learned quickly that when one child is drowning, you don't focus on the one who's barely treading water. That was Megan and me. She was the drowning child. And I was just trying to stay afloat. My own difficulties faded into the background. They weren't dismissed entirely, but they were never a priority either. When I think about Max's family and their potential reactions, it's not their opinions that concern me. It's Megan. I know how this goes. They stare, she notices, it stresses her out, her tics worsen, she hurts herself, or someone else. That's the real problem. That's what I was afraid of. I see now that I was catastrophizing. I had convinced myself that all children stare, that all children would react the same way, but I was wrong. Some kids are raised with understanding, prepared for moments like these. They won't react with shock or cruelty. They'll simply accept. I hadn't considered that possibility before, but I see it now. I also realize that my aversion to Megan's verbal tics isn't just about the wedding. It's about me. I am, and always have been, deeply sensitive to loud, unexpected noises. Her tics are exactly that. And while I can control my outward reactions most of the time, the discomfort never goes away. Even if it were just the two of us in an empty room, I'd still struggle. As for the violent tics, the elbow, the stomping, the flailing, I've seen them enough to know how unpredictable they are. The elbow is the worst. She has described it as an uncontrollable urge, something she must do. Most of the time, it lands on furniture, walls, empty space. But sometimes, it lands on people. The last human target was our dad at Thanksgiving. He's got some extra padding, so he was fine. The couch, however, was less fortunate. I've learned a lot through this, more than I expected. There are things I'll need to work on, things I need to unlearn. But I also stand by some of my choices. I don't regret wanting my vows to be public. I don't regret prioritizing Megan's well-being. And I don't regret taking the time to really think about all of this. Update 2. All 3 girls are moved out the house. Max and I have an apartment in a big city that will remain unnamed for privacy reasons, and my youngest sister, 24F, I will call her Mia, is in law school at a university that will also remain unnamed. We're both in relatively drivable distances from our hometown, where Megan and our parents live. It's a small town where everyone knows everyone type of deal, and Megan attended a community college where she was already known by the professors and student body. While Megan lives on her own, she is very reliant on our parents. She has never even attempted to get a driver's license because of the possibility a tic could cause her to swerve, reasonable in my opinion, so my mom drives her to and from work every day. This is not me looking down on Megan in any way for not attending a 4-year big name like Mia and I, or for needing extra help from our parents, because she does need it. This is to explain that Megan and my parents, particularly my mom, are very close. In my opinion, my mom does things for Megan, mostly interpersonal conflicts, that I think she can handle on her own. Megan rarely communicates directly with Mia and I. Instead, our mom usually calls us and says Megan wants X, or Megan mentioned she felt Y. Our fight about the wedding was one of the few real discussions we've had without mom mediating. So the first person I actually called was my mom and not Megan. I told her that Megan and I are both grown adults who are capable of handling ourselves. I said I will not take anything into consideration other than what comes directly from Megan's mouth. If mom tells me Megan is upset, I will disregard it. I got pretty frustrated when she steamrolled over my request and threw in her face that I'm the one paying for the wedding, not her and dad, which I regretted. I said I'm willing to work something out with Megan, but if they refuse to communicate or try to disrupt our conversation, all 3 of them will be disinvited. I reminded her Megan was an adult and hung up. I won't copy and paste the exact text I sent Megan, but here are the main points. It was not my intention to hurt you, and I'm sorry. Please let me explain. I want to talk, not text. Things are too easily misconstrued. Your verbal tics have never been a problem for me. I didn't mean to make you feel ashamed of them. I don't want you to feel like we can't talk. The wedding ceremony is a one-time thing. I can explain if you call me. Mom and dad are not present in the room when she calls me. I have already called mom and told her to stay out of my business. I want to talk to her alone, and breaking my trust on this will have serious consequences. A list of 2-hour blocks in the next 3 days. I'm available to have a conversation. I love you, she responded, picking one of the times tomorrow and nothing more, but I'm hopeful we can work this out. Update 3. I called Megan this morning. I'll summarize our conversation, excluding any verbal tics. It's very, very, very long, and all names are fake for privacy reasons. I will refer to myself as Michelle. Brief interlude you can skip if you want. Megan, you need someone to explain crying to you? Me, this is the first time you've cried about it to me. Obviously I know what crying means. I'm not a complete dumbass. Megan, I didn't say you were a complete dumbass. Me, I felt like it was implied. Megan, You just told me how bad you were at understanding implications. Me, I can still guess. Megan, well, your guess is wrong. So after my call with Megan, I walked into our shared bedroom, and he didn't even have time to ask how it went before I burst into tears. He held me for a while. I am fine physical touch and affection, especially from him, as long as it's not unexpected. Eventually my phone started ringing again and I saw that it was Mom. I told Max that I didn't want to talk to her, but if I didn't pick up it would become a whole thing. He just silently held out his hand, and when I realized what he meant, I put my phone in it. The conversation wasn't on speaker and I didn't really care enough to try and listen to what she said, and for the most part I don't remember what he said after telling my mom I couldn't come to the phone, just the beginning. Well, Michelle's crying too. I think you should be just as concerned about that. And the end, yeah, well, my parents have said they'd more than happy to walk her down the aisle, so you think on that. I told Max about these posts and he was a little confused but supportive, and thinks it's funny how I've picked out names starting with M for everyone. I have not had any more calls from my family, but Max called his mother, very nice lady, and put her on speaker, and she reiterated she'd be happy to walk me down the aisle with her husband. So that is that for now. I find the anonymity very freeing, as well as writing down what happened, so I will update you all as soon as there is on. Update 4. I honestly don't even know where to begin. If you had told me a month ago that my wedding would turn into this tangled web of family drama, unexpected betrayals, and a full-blown existential crisis about what it means to be a good sister, I would have laughed in your face. But here we are. So, where to start? Well, the first major thing, Megan has officially declined attending the wedding entirely. She sent me a text the day after our last call, and it was short and to the point. I've thought about it and I don't think I should come to the wedding at all. This isn't a tantrum, and I'm not trying to make you feel bad, but if I go, I'll feel like everyone is thinking about the fact that I wasn't allowed at the ceremony. I don't want to sit through dinner knowing that everyone else got to witness something I didn't. It would be humiliating for me. I love you, but I think it's best if I just stay home. Hope your day is amazing. I immediately called her, but she didn't pick up. Then I called my mom. No answer. Then my dad, he answered, but he was distant and weird and said Megan needed time and that my mom was too upset to talk. And that's when I realized, they had already decided I was the villain, and nothing I said was going to change that. Max was great. He sat with me while I tried, and failed, to process my emotions in any logical way. It's her decision, he kept saying. You're not responsible for how she chooses to react. And maybe he's right. But the thing is, I do feel responsible. Maybe that's my childhood programming kicking in, the part of me that learned early on that Megan's struggles always took precedence over my own. That if she was upset, it automatically meant I had done something wrong. But even while I was sitting there, spiraling, I was also angry. Not at Megan for being hurt, but at the fact that she got to drop this bombshell on me via text and then disappear while I was left to deal with the fallout. She didn't have to handle my emotions about it. She didn't have to hear my side or work through it with me. She just got to leave me with this giant hole in my wedding and move on. And that's when I made my decision. I wasn't going to chase her. I wasn't going to beg. If she wanted to exclude herself, then fine. But I wasn't going to spend my engagement feeling guilty for something I still wasn't even sure was wrong. Then things got worse. 3 days after Megan's text, I got a call from my aunt, my mom's sister, who is normally the least dramatic person alive. She was furious. She started off with, "Did you know your mother is telling people you banned Megan from the entire wedding?" I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Apparently, my mom had been going around telling our extended family that I didn't want Megan there and that I had chosen aesthetics over family. She also implied I was embarrassed by her, that I didn't want Max's family to see her, and that I had treated her like a burden. The worst part? People were believing her. By the time I got off the phone with my aunt, I had a flood of missed calls from various relatives. My grandmother left a voicemail saying she was disappointed in me. My cousin texted to say she thought my decision was cold. Even a few people I barely even knew, like second cousins I only see at Christmas, suddenly had opinions about my wedding. I was livid. And heartbroken. And exhausted. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I called my mom and told her she was uninvited. I was surprisingly calm when I said it. I just told her that I knew what she had been saying, that she had twisted things so badly I didn't even recognize her version of events, and that if she really thought I was such a cruel person, then she shouldn't come to my wedding at all. She cried. She accused me of choosing Max's family over my own. She said she never meant for it to get back to me. Which, wow, really makes it better, Mom. She told me she was just advocating for Megan, and that I was being heartless. But I held my ground. I told her she needed to apologize, not just to me, but to the entire family she had lied to, if she wanted an invitation back. And then I hung up. Now, here's the kicker, my dad still plans to come. He told me he doesn't want to take sides but also won't try to force my mom's way back in. He actually apologized for not stepping in sooner, which was unexpected. And weird, but honestly, I'll take it. Megan still hasn't reached out. And I still don't know how I feel about that. But at this point, I'm too drained to analyze it. So where does that leave me? With a wedding that will be missing 2 major people. With a family that is, at best, fractured. But also, With a fiancé who has stood by me through every awful moment. With in-laws who have been nothing but supportive. With friends who remind me that love isn't conditional. And I think that's enough. Update 5. After uninviting my mom, I expected radio silence. Maybe a dramatic Facebook post about losing a daughter or some passive-aggressive group texts. But instead, the silence was almost eerie. Not a single text. No calls. Not even a reaction from my dad, who has always been the default peacemaker. Max kept telling me to just breathe, to focus on the wedding, to let people be upset if they needed to be upset. But I knew my family. And I knew something was coming. I just didn't expect this. I was at work when I got the first message. It was from an unknown number, just 2 words, check Reddit. My stomach dropped. I clicked the link that followed, and there it was, a post from Megan herself. A full-blown, detailed account of everything that had happened, but twisted in ways that made me look like a complete monster. She framed it as a heartbreaking story of ableism, of a sister who had abandoned her disabled sibling for the sake of a picture-perfect wedding. She even included details that I knew only my mom could have given her, about private conversations, about moments of doubt I had confided to my family in the past. It was all there, in black and white, for the world to tear apart. And they did. The comments were vicious. Strangers calling me cruel, selfish, an ableist bridezilla. There were death threats. People were saying they'd find my wedding venue and crash it just to scream Megan's name during my vows. Someone posted my full name and address in the comments, which thankfully got deleted before it spiraled, but the damage was done. I felt like I was drowning. By the time I got home, my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't even type out a text to Max. But when I walked through the door, he was already on the phone, his face pale, his expression stone cold. He didn't say a word when I walked in, just pulled me into a hug while still listening to whoever was on the other end of the line. It was his older brother, who had seen the post and was calling to warn us that it was spreading fast. I don't remember much after that. There were too many emotions slamming into me at once: rage, betrayal, complete disbelief that my own sister had gone to the internet to publicly crucify me. The worst part? Megan wasn't responding to my calls. Neither was my mom. Then, something even crazier happened. I got an email. From a reporter. Apparently, the story had gained so much traction that a few online news sites were looking to cover it. They wanted a statement. My side of the story. At this point, I was teetering between a full-blown breakdown and an out-of-body experience. Max and I sat on the couch in complete silence, staring at my phone like it was a ticking time bomb. And then I made the biggest decision of my life. I called my dad. Not my mom. Not Megan. My dad. When he answered, he sounded exhausted, like he had aged 10 years in the last few days. He didn't even say hello, just let out a deep sigh and muttered, "I was wondering when you'd call." For the first time in years, I didn't hold back. I let loose. I demanded to know what the hell was going on, why Megan had done this, why my own mother was fueling the fire. And that's when he finally broke. It wasn't Megan's idea, he admitted. Your mother told her to do it. I swear, the world stopped. Apparently, my mom, my own mother, had orchestrated the entire thing. She had convinced Megan that the only way to make things right was to publicly shame me, to make the world see what a horrible person I was. My dad didn't even find out about the Reddit post until after it had already blown up. And when he confronted my mom, she told him she was doing what needed to be done to show me the consequences of my choices. Consequences. Like I was some kind of child who needed to be punished. At that moment, something inside me snapped. I don't even know how to describe it, like a final, frayed thread just snapped. I told my dad I was done. With all of it. With Megan, with my mom, with the entire twisted family dynamic that had ruled my life since childhood. I told him I didn't care what they said about me online, that I didn't care if I was painted as the villain. Because at least I knew the truth. And then I hung up. Max was already packing bags. Where are we going? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Away, he said simply. Just for a few days. Somewhere they can't reach you. And so we left. We turned off our phones, got in the car, and drove until the city lights disappeared behind us. I don't know what's waiting for me when I turn my phone back on. I don't know if Megan regrets what she did, if my mom is still spewing lies, if the internet has moved on to another drama. All I know is that for the first time in my life, I feel free. Update 6. So, after Megan's post went up, I went into full-on crisis mode. The guilt was crushing, but what hit harder were the absolute lies being spread about me. The comments were savage. I spent hours trying to process everything, reading through comment after comment from strangers calling me all kinds of names, accusing me of being an ableist, a terrible sister, a bridezilla, anything to make me feel worse. Some people even went so far as to say that I deserved a wedding disaster for punishing my sister over her condition. One person even threatened to show up at my venue and shout her name during my vows to make sure I knew what real love for family looks like. It felt like the entire internet was against me. Even after explaining myself and sharing my side of the story, I was still portrayed as the villain. I want to be clear, I don't blame Megan for feeling hurt. I never wanted to hurt her. But what really killed me was how she chose to paint the entire situation in a light that was completely disconnected from reality. The worst part? She had my mom involved in everything, sharing private moments I'd had with my family. Megan knew how deeply conflicted I was, how much pain I felt over everything. But she used that against me. Max was my rock, as always. He kept telling me that none of this was my fault, and that I couldn't control what Megan did or how the internet would react. But honestly, I didn't believe him at first. I couldn't stop questioning myself. Did I make the wrong decision? Was there another way? But as the days passed, I realized that while I can't control everything, I can control how I handle this mess. So, instead of caving into the pressure, I did what I thought was the most mature thing I could do in that moment. I posted my own side of the story on Reddit. Not a detailed breakdown, not a defense of every little thing I'd said or done, but a statement. Just an honest one. I posted something along the lines of, I've seen the post going around about me, and I want to say that I never intended to hurt my sister, Megan. She's been an incredible part of my life, and I've always done my best to support her. But what's being said here isn't the full story. The decisions I made were for her well-being as much as my own. I've struggled with rigid thinking, and I never wanted to make her feel like her tics or her struggles were something to be ashamed of. This has been incredibly hard for me, and I'm sorry if anyone feels hurt by what happened. But my wedding is mine and Max's day, and I made decisions based on what I felt was best for everyone involved. This is a conversation that should have stayed private, but I'm here to own my choices and take responsibility for what I've done. I'm human, and I've made mistakes. I didn't expect it to fix everything, but it was a way to speak my truth. I wanted people to understand that I wasn't a monster, and that my family's personal drama had no place being spread out for the world to dissect. To my surprise, people responded differently than I expected. A lot of the negative comments still rolled in, but there were also people who reached out to say they understood my perspective. Some even shared their own experiences with family members who had disabilities and how complicated it could be to navigate those relationships. It wasn't a cure-all, but it made me feel heard, and that was something I hadn't felt in a while. But then the wildest thing happened. A couple of days after I posted my response, Max and I got a call. It was from my dad, just my dad, no mom, no Megan. He was apologetic. He admitted that my mom had been telling everyone a very skewed version of events, and he said he didn't even realize how bad it had gotten until he'd seen my Reddit post. Apparently, when he tried to confront my mom about it, she just doubled down. But he was at a crossroads. He told me he didn't want to lose me, and he didn't want to lose Megan, either. He wanted to find a way to make this right. It was a strange conversation, the first time my dad had ever openly sided with me on something this big. I wasn't sure if it was just the fallout from everything or if he had finally realized how manipulative my mom could be in these situations, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like my dad was seeing me. But that doesn't mean things were all fixed. I haven't heard from Megan directly since she made that post. My mom, on the other hand, hasn't stopped calling. At first, it was tear-filled apologies, followed by accusations that I was punishing her for protecting Megan. But when I didn't respond, it turned into guilt trips, saying I was breaking her heart and that she couldn't believe I'd chosen a stranger over my own mother. That's when I finally told her, if she wasn't willing to fix her actions, apologize to me and to the family she had lied to, then she was out. As for Megan? I'm still not sure where we stand. I want to reach out, but after everything that's happened, I'm not sure it'll be received well. At this point, I feel like I've done all I can. I've apologized, I've explained, and now the ball is in her court. But it's hard. It's hard to let go, but I'm realizing that sometimes, even family has to be put at arm's length for the sake of your own mental well-being. Max and I have decided to move forward with the wedding as planned. We're excited to finally marry, and the support from his family and my friends has meant the world to me. I'm not going to let all of this overshadow the most important day of my life. But I also know that I've got some big decisions to make in the future when it comes to my family. Whether that means reconciling or not, I don't know yet. But for now, I'll take one step at a time.